Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Writer's Life with Jack Olesker. So today, I'm going to start covering some of the characters that I knew when I was going through DIC. And the motion picture and television industry, more than a lot of industries, has characters in it. I mean, real life people that are somehow larger than life. Louis B. Mayer, who founded Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer along with Sam Goldwyn, and I mean, you name it. Jack Nicholson, Clint Eastwood, Meryl Streep. These are larger than life characters. And although ours in the animation industry are less well known, they were no less larger than life. And I think you'll enjoy meeting some of them because it'll give you a background of what the environment was like at DIC when I was there. So we were talking about Roger Cohen in the last episode, and I had just returned from a great meeting with Judy Price at CBS. I'm kind of up in the stratosphere, and Howard says, "How did your meeting go, kid?" He's trying to slam me a little bit. And first of all, you got to understand, Howard weighed about 300 pounds. And I'm not talking New England Patriots linebacker 300 pounds, okay? He was slovenly, ill-dressed, ill-groomed, okay? But, Chilon, one of the seven sages of ancient Greece, in 600 BC, once correctly said, "It's not wise to speak ill of the departed." And I think he was right. So I'm not going to speak ill about Howard. So, it kind of felt, wow, what's going on here? So, I said the meeting was great and everything. And, there were 3 or 4 writers gathered around, and they could see we were kind of butting heads a little bit, and we chatted a little back and forth. And he said, "Oh, I understand you were trying to blackball some people at your Care Bears meeting if they didn't show up." And I said, "Look, we were behind schedule. I had to do something to make it happen, and that's what I did." And we start to get a little bit heated. And as we're talking, Lori Crawford walks around the corner, and she says, "What's going on here?" And I said, "We're just having a discussion." And she said, "Sounds more like a pissing contest to me." So she said, "We're not going to have this here." And everybody turns around because Andy walks around the corner and says, "Who's having a pissing contest?" And Lori, of course, who loves stirring the pot, says, "Howard and Jack." And Andy said, "Well, what's going on here?" And Howard said, I just don't like it when somebody tries to throw their weight around, pun intended. You got to understand, Howard Cohen, in the 70s, he worked with genius, low-budget producer Roger Corman. And genius is the word for Roger Corman. And Howard did these films for Corman that were on shoestring budgets. Because I don't keep all of my file drawers filled with stuff that is not really useful to me, I don't remember the name of the films that Howard worked on. So fortunately, I Googled them, and they were Cover Girl Model, Space Raiders, Saturday the 14th, The Young Nurses, and of course, the immortal Vampire Hookers, okay? And look, you can laugh all you want, but in Hollywood, if you actually get a film produced and into the theaters, that's a real accomplishment. So Howard did that. And like I said, he was a real character. Once we got to know each other a little better, and actually we became very good friends over a period of years. Two big dogs, on the street corner. Those dogs are gonna lock horns at some point. And we ended up respecting each other. And he was a jovial guy, and he had a good sense of humor. And one day we were at lunch, and I said, "Howard, you've got a reputation for only dating beautiful young actresses. And I said, I don't mean to be denigrating. And he interrupted me. He says, Jack, I know the deal. He says, I know I'm not Robert Redford. So I said, well, okay. So how do you do that, Howard? How do you end up going out with these gorgeous young actresses? And he kind of grinned and he said, what I do is I ask 100 beautiful women if they want to go out for dinner with me. And if 2 of them says yes, I'm doing pretty good. So, he had that great offbeat kind of sense of humor. So, getting back to reality, you gotta know that Howard was the great man at DIC, okay? Years later, in 2008, when I was the president of Motion Picture and Television Studio in Chennai, India, V.S. Soundarajan, who was a legend in India and still is, he was the CEO of the company, and V.S. and I were such dear friends and still are. He would take me to these amazing 5-star restaurants to meet with his Indian investors and big CEOs, and with his Indian accent, he would always introduce me, and he would say, "This is Jack Olesker, the great man," and all the investors would rise, So I guess at that point in my career and today as well, I am the great man. Okay, I told you once, I don't believe in false modesty. My credentials speak for themselves. But at that point in time, in 1984, I wasn't the great man. Okay, I wasn't even a man. I was just a newbie, excuse me, in this business. And Howard was the great man. So Andy says, "What's going on here, Howard?" And Howard said, "Well, I just don't like when somebody tries, this kind of nonsense where he tells somebody you're going to be blackballed if you don't come to the meeting and stuff." And Andy said, "Well, the end justifies the means. Jack's back on schedule with everything." And Howard says, it just doesn't sit right with me, okay? And I'm not real happy about it. And I remember there were about 6 or 7 writers around us. And Andy said, Howard, you're pretty big for your britches, and you should remember what you were like when I first hired you to work at DIC. And I didn't know what Andy was talking about, but I watched Howard, and I'd never seen anything like this in my life. He kind of shriveled, okay, and withdrew inside of himself and couldn't even talk. And he turned around and he walked away. And about 6 months later, Lori told me the story. And like I said, I don't talk ill of those who have departed and are on another plane of existence. But Howard was in bad shape when Andy hired him. And, people say Andy's such a tough businessman. I know I've said this before, Andy Hayward. And like me, he's been around for, over 45 years. Tremendously successful. Works like a demon, like an animal, just like me, which is why I think we respect each other and why we email each other back and forth every month to check up on each other. So, but he's a tough businessman. And I always defend Andy, not that he needs any defending, but there were 2 times that I remember that Andy showed a level of kindness that touched my heart. And one was when I learned about how he took Howard in when Howard was at a low point in his life. And the other time, and I've said this before, I'll talk about it in a future episode, was when he showed a lot of kindness to me at a point in time that I needed kindness. But in this particular meeting, he shut Howard down, and that was the end of it. And the next day I come in, and I walk into my office, and I sit down, and Howard comes around the corner, and, I'm loaded for bear. I'm ready. If you want round 2, this south side of Chicago tough kid is ready for you. And he looks at me and he says, you know, I think I was a little tough on you yesterday. Wow, it just totally deflated me. So I said, look, you know, I said, I think I could have handled setting the meeting better than I did. I think I was a little over the top with my writers. So maybe each of us erred a little bit. And he said, that's good. So he puts a sheath of 10 pages on my desk. And I said, what's that? He said, well, he says, I heard you were doing good on Care Bears, but you know, the word is that it's kind of slowed down a little bit now. You're not getting as many springboards coming in because you got a lot of writers that are working on scripts. He says, here's 10 springboards for Care Bears. And I want you to know that every one of them is a winner. I said, thank you, Howard. And we parted and we began a long friendship. And I'll tell you what, I looked at those 10 springboards and he was right. Every one of them was right on target. And I used a lot of them. And that's what happens when you're dealing with a great man. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.